listening to LSU Daily with Matt Musso, your home for all things LSU sports.
Off and running here on another edition of LSU Daily. Welcome in and glad to have you with me. Just a few days away now from LSU and Ole Miss, the showdown in Tiger Stadium. We now have the official SEC injury report for the ball game, and it tells an interesting story on both sides. Each, Brian Kelly and Lane Kiffin, on the SEC coaches teleconference Wednesday morning and afternoon, addressed key players that are on that injury report. We'll let you hear what the coaches had to say and tell you status and how that might impact this massive top 15 matchup in Death Valley on Saturday night. So, again, glad to have you with me. Be sure to subscribe, share, like, follow me on social media at Musso Matthew on Twitter. You can find me on Facebook, on Instagram at Matthew Musso1. All of that greatly appreciated. I will continue to say, if you're interested in potential sponsor opportunity, reach out to me, matthew.musso@guaranteemedia.com, or certain social media. Just go ahead, DM me. We can see if we can get something going. I'd love to work with any of y'all who are interested. I love fostering relationships. So I want to just kind of continue to throw that out there as well as we hit kind of the stretch run of the season now deep into SEC play. All right, LSU and Ole Miss. Injuries, a big part of this. Y'all, we started the week talking about the injury to Tre Harris, the star Ole Miss wide receiver, the best offensive weapon that Ole Miss has had all season long. He is the leading receiver in the nation. I mean, it's not even close. When you look at Ole Miss's statistics on the season, you see just how much the offense has run through a guy like Tre Harris. I mean, that's how we started the week, was talking about that. We'll give you the latest there, as well as Brian Kelly talking about Chris Hilton. Let's start with LSU, and we'll start there with Chris Hilton. So this was really what got the most play out of Brian Kelly's appearance on the SEC coaches teleconference. Of course, Chris Hilton, you saw him really kind of burst onto the scene late in 2023, specifically in the bowl game against Wisconsin, and it looked like he was primed for a breakout, standout season in 2024 for LSU. Brian Kelly consistently talked about him throughout training camp, saying that breakout year, going to be a key player for LSU in 2024. He was part of just about every training camp report you saw featured Chris Hilton in some aspect. And then in one of the last practices, he ends up getting injured. It's a bone bruise, and you haven't seen him yet this season. Chris Hilton, Brian Kelly, the last 2 weeks gave probable against UCLA. He went through warm-ups, didn't play. Gave probable against South Alabama, didn't dress out in the game, so obviously didn't play. Now going into the bye week, everybody obviously wants to know, hey, is Chris Hilton finally going to make his debut this week for LSU against Ole Miss? Brian Kelly on that injury.
It's been a complicated injury, and let's get the record straight, just so everybody knows. Chris has done everything to get back as quickly as possible. This has been an injury that we've done scans and MRIs, and the healing has just been slow. If he had the proper healing and was ready to go, he's put in the time and he has the want to be out there. So I want to be clear that everyone should understand that Chris, if he's able to be out there, he would be out there. It's just, this has been just one of those unusual injuries that has taken so much longer to heal than normal.
So it's obviously interesting to hear him talk about the healing process there. And, look, it's taken longer than normal. But the part that struck me, and it reminded me of something else that Brian Kelly had said earlier this season, the part that struck me was when he said, look, Chris has done everything he needs to do to get back. If Chris feels ready to go, like he has a want to be out there and play, when he feels ready, he's going to be out there. And I'll take you back to September the 9th. So this is leading into the South Carolina game. And Brian Kelly was asked kind of update on Chris Hilton. And this is what he said. Again, this is September 9th, Brian Kelly on Chris Hilton.
Chris is day-to-day. He is ground-based. He is running. This now becomes, what can you tolerate? There's going to be some pain associated with it, but he has all function now, and it's just a matter of time now with Chris. When he starts to feel really good, where he can get in and out of breaks and function at his level, we'll see him back on the field.
So here's ultimately what I take from this. Brian Kelly didn't say it on Wednesday as kind of bluntly as he did there, but it sounds like this is just a pain tolerance thing for Chris Hilton right now, and everybody goes through that differently. Not everybody is the same. Guys tolerate pain at different thresholds, and you can obviously see as well what Brian Kelly is saying, where that cut we just played is, that's a month ago. And he was day-to-day, but he was ground-based. He had all function back. It was pain tolerance. And you're still here now a month later, and you haven't seen him, even given 2 probable diagnoses. That speaks to what Brian Kelly was saying. The healing process has just ultimately been slow. And again, I don't necessarily know if it's totally the healing process there. I don't really want to speak on that. But what I can glean from the 2 responses there is pain tolerance. Now, here's the thing. Chris Hilton could very well play this week against Ole Miss. Who knows? It's a huge game. He's got to want to be out there. If he feels like he wants to give it a go, Brian Kelly said he's going to give it a go. If he can tolerate the pain, he'll give it a go. So let me say that first. He could very well play this week. Chris Hilton is listed as questionable on the injury report. Now, that is a downgrade technically from where Brian Kelly put him the last 2 weeks when he was probable, but questionable doesn't mean out. That being said, given everything we know, what you've seen or haven't seen so far, listening to Brian Kelly talk about the lack of healing, the slowness in the healing, pain tolerance, things of that nature, the comfort level that Chris has to have, knowing he can get in and out of breaks, play up to his standard, I think you have to go forth right now in this season just understanding that you're not going to have Chris Hilton. That's not a shot at the young man, and I'll give you 2 full reasons why it stinks. And number 1 is the personal reason for him, because that kid has just been through so much at LSU when it comes to injuries and not being able to stay on the field consistently, and it sucks. It just sucks because we've all been aware of Chris Hilton for so long. When he was at Zachary in high school, like everyone knew about him early in his high school career. He's been on everyone's radar here for a very long time, and everybody's wanted to see him play, and ultimately he's just kind of been robbed of the opportunity. Some of that's bad luck. So, the human element part of it, that really sucks. Because you got the glimpse of it in an LSU uniform at the end of last year in that bowl game, and you couldn't wait for this year, you just haven't seen it. But until you do, and with slowness and healing, you just have to assume you're going forth without him right now. Now, from a football perspective, we know why that sucks. LSU does not have a deep threat on this team consistently like Chris Hilton could provide. It's the one aspect of your passing game that you're missing. And, oh, by the way, you took another hit in that regard for this week, and we're going to get to that momentarily. It's not just Hilton in the wide receiver room. But LSU sorely misses the ability to stretch the football field on offense this year. It hasn't shown up yet because you are so strong in your intermediate and short passing game. Those digs, the 10-yarders, like LSU's great there. And the yard after catch has been really good there. But you are about to take a step up in competition, and that will change the way that teams guard you. It already has changed the way that teams guard you, and they have no fear of Kyron Lacey or anyone like that, or C.J. Daniels beating you over the top consistently. And when you take the step up in competition and you're facing better secondaries than you've seen in the pre-conference here now that you're in SEC play, that is going to matter. So, look, that's the way I'm operating until Chris Hilton can get back out there in the field, until I see him out on the field playing in the football game. And look, he could very well play this week, but until I see it, I'm operating under the assumption that you're just not going to have him going forward right now. And it's very unfortunate. Now, in that same vein at wide receiver against Ole Miss on Saturday, LSU is also going to be without Kyle Parker. Kyle Parker listed as out for the game on Saturday, and that's a blow. Kyle Parker is the other guy that you've seen kind of be able to stretch the field. Remember, when Chris Hilton missed the opener, Brian Kelly said Kyle Parker's the next guy up. He can fill that role. He's had a great camp, all of those things. And ultimately, Kyle Parker got hurt, and you didn't see him play there. But when you did against UCLA, you saw him able to stretch the football field a little bit. He didn't have great separation on it, but it was a fantastic throw by Nussmeier, and you had the long touchdown. But even Kyle Parker, while he could do it, he's not that consistent, threat down the field. So you take a big hit there. So Kyle Parker out matters in the realm of stretching the field. The other wide receiver to keep an eye on is C.J. Daniels. C.J. Daniels officially listed as questionable for the ball game on Saturday. Now, what should be noted is, again, it's a knee injury for C.J. Daniels. It should be noted that earlier in the week, on Monday, Brian Kelly wasn't, he didn't go in depth, but he did say that C.J. Daniels was back at practice and is expected to practice all week for LSU. So when you look at that questionable designation, I think it is acceptable to lean to the fact that he might play. And he's been awesome. He's been kind of a security blanket for Garrett Nussmeier. You talk about a guy who's been great in the intermediate routes and the yard after catch. C.J. Daniels has been that type of guy, but he's a possession receiver. Now, I think it's real easy to look at the three names we mentioned and be like, oh gosh, that's three bodies that you could potentially be down, and that's true. But ultimately, LSU still has Kyron Lacey. LSU still has Aaron Anderson. LSU still has Mason Taylor. And those three guys have been your best in the receiving game this year. So yes, while you could be down three guys, it's not the three that have led you and paced you all season. You still have plenty of ability there. What's more interesting is a guy like Shelton Sampson. Is this finally his opportunity without Kyle Parker, potentially without Chris Hilton and C.J. Daniels? This is going to be a chance for number 6. Can he finally get out there and make a statement and burst onto the scene? There's no better stage to do it on if you're a guy like Shelton Sampson than right now. But he's absolutely going to be somebody who a lot of people look at in this spot with those guys going down. But ultimately, from a receiving standpoint, I think LSU will still be able to do plenty of what they've done. And you've gotten by fine without being able to stretch the field. It's not like you're losing that ability. You haven't had it all year. I think your receiving and passing game is still very much intact. If LSU's offensive line keeps Garrett Nussmeier upright, which they have all year, he will be able to stand back there, throw, and you will see a productive passing game, and LSU will score points. The other big injury note to get to is Caden Durham. Caden Durham, of course, the foot injury. Obviously, Brian Kelly dismissed it after the game against South Alabama, said it wasn't serious. Caden Durham came back in, as a matter of fact, after the initial injury and played the rest of the first half. Then you sit him in the second half. You were up 35-10. There was no reason, to really have him out there anymore. Caden Durham is listed as probable. I don't really need to tell y'all why that's massive. Caden Durham has been arguably your best offensive weapon here the last 3 or so weeks. You saw him burst on the scene against South Carolina. He had the long touchdown against UCLA, and then he just took over the South Alabama game early. He's really emerged. He has added a new dimension not only to your running game, but also to your passing game. Caden Durham has been a dynamic player for LSU. Having him probable for this a matchup of this magnitude is huge, so expect Durham to play. The other big takeaway is there is no Zy Alexander on the injury report at all. That would tell you he has cleared concussion protocol and he is ready to go. So you should have your best combination at cornerback out there. What does that say? You've had a few struggles there still, but Ashton Stamps, Zy Alexander, that is your best combination at corner, and you should have that ready to go against Ole Miss. So ultimately, yes, I think it's more good than bad for LSU on the injury report, but there are notable names that bear going through there. The one other thing I'll mention is West Weeks. West Weeks is listed as doubtful for this game, and that is impactful. I expect against Ole Miss, LSU to play a lot of 4-2-5 anyway, just because of how Ole Miss is going to spread you out and the speed and the tempo and all those things. So you could still have Whit Weeks and Greg Penn out there as your two linebackers and be okay. and Major Burns at star and whatnot. But what is interesting, if LSU is forced in any capacity to go to 4-3, without West Weeks, that would force one of your freshman linebackers onto the field, whether that's Xavier Atkins or Devon Keys. So that is a matchup as well to kind of keep in mind there. So, like I said, the injury report is significant for both teams. That's LSU's take on it. Let's look now at Ole Miss, and we will start obviously there with Tre Harris. And like I said, we started the week talking about Tre Harris. He is the nation's leading receiver. 52 receptions, 885 yards, 5 touchdowns. The 885 yards in 5.5 games, mind you, leads the nation. Antoine Wells, the second leading receiver on Ole Miss's team, he has 17 receptions for 371. Like, everything in the passing game has gone through Tre Harris. He has been their best offensive weapon by far. It is an ankle injury for him. It happened in the second quarter against South Carolina. He did not return, and after the game, Lane Kiffin said he was not close to returning in that ballgame. On the official injury report, Tre Harris is listed as questionable for Ole Miss, but I want to take you back to Monday and let you hear the update that Lane Kiffin gave on Tre Harris. This was Monday.
I mean, we don't, as you guys know, we don't really get into much detail on that. You know, he couldn't finish the first half and wasn't really close to going back in the second half. And he certainly wouldn't be playing today. So, you know, we got to get the other guys ready. We got to perform better than we did in the second half without him. We only had 3 points. Now, we only threw 1 pass in the fourth quarter. But, you know, that makes us move people in different spots when he's out. So, we're preparing to do that and preparing to play without him.
So on Monday, Lane Kiffin is telling you if we had to play today, he wouldn't play. We have to get other guys ready. We're preparing to play without him. That's on Monday. Now, you see him listed as questionable, but again, there's been so many mixed reports coming out of Ole Miss that he's not going to play or that he is going to play, but he's not going to be 100%. He wouldn't be as effective. Tre Harris is noteworthy. He is a Louisiana native. He wants to play in this football game. It means an awful lot to him. He dominated LSU last year to the tune of 153 yards and 2 scores, caught the game-winning touchdown in that game as well. His presence is huge in this football game. But Lane Kiffin on Monday told you they're preparing to play without him. And again, you've heard reports from certain people that say they don't think Tre Harris is going to play. Certain people around the program know that he's not going to play. You've also heard reports from guys around that he will give it a go, but he's not going to be 100% and be as effective as he has been. The other guy to really keep an eye on that has an interesting designation for Ole Miss is the transfer defensive end from Florida, call him Princely U. 3.5 sacks on the season for Ole Miss. That is second on their club. He has been awesome. He was a wrecking machine at Florida, and he's been that for Ole Miss as well. He, for this game, listed as questionable. Lane Kiffin was asked about Princely on the SEC Coaches Teleconference Wednesday. This is what he had to say.
Given that Princely Umanmielen was out last week, do you anticipate him having any sort of role or any playing time in the near future due to his injury?
Yeah, hope he plays this week, but we don't know that yet.
That's more of the conventional Lane Kiffin injury answer. Yeah, I hope he plays this week, but we don't know that yet. Listed as questionable, would be a big miss for Ole Miss on the defensive side, specifically their defensive line. I mean, he's been one of their best pass rushers all season long. Definitely on the defensive line, because Suntarian Perkins is the sack leader, but he's more of the the edge outside linebacker type. Princely definitely more defensive end guy there. So that's something else to obviously keep an eye on there. The other big note I would give you from Ole Miss's injury report is Henry Parrish. Henry Parrish Jr., running back, he's been dealing with nagging injuries here and there. He is listed as probable. Did play against South Carolina, was not 100% in that ball game, but listed as probable here to go for LSU. Ole Miss's leading rusher, 9 touchdowns on the year, 570 yards, and that's the thing that gets lost in the wash, man. With the Lane Kiffin offense, everybody gets so wowed by the Tre Harrises and the Jackson Dart throwing him the ball. But Ole Miss and Lane Kiffin, they want to run the football. That is when their offense and his offense functions at its best. So LSU is going to have to stop the running game on Saturday. It's something they did not do last year, and that is ultimately what led to so much success for Ole Miss. That and LSU's defense was just horrible. But, I mean, Ole Miss ran for over 300 yards in that game. That obviously can't happen. And I think LSU's better equipped. I think they've tackled better this year, and that was a huge point of contention in this game last season. But you have to be able to stop the run, and it looks like Ole Miss will have Henry Parrish, their leading rusher, ready to go for this ball game, listed as probable. So if you kind of look at it in its totality, I don't really know if one side comes out better than the other. I think the injury to Tre Harris is obviously the one that looms the largest in this game. That shouldn't be a surprise. That just greatly hampers Ole Miss's offense. Ole Miss, without Tre Harris in the ball game against South Carolina, scored 3 points in the second half. That was it. Really, the second half is some change. They had 24 going into the break, 3 points. Now, as Lane Kiffin said, they only attempted one pass, I believe it was in the fourth quarter, so that matters. But it changes the way their offense plays. That is the injury that looms most large. But when you look at it from the LSU side, you do take a hit to your depth at wide receiver, although I think you're good there in what you can still do, from a passing game standpoint. And for Ole Miss, it's big getting your leading rusher back as well. Good news on the running back front for both teams. Obviously, that's huge. So the Tre Harris one's the one to continue to watch. That could greatly swing this into LSU's favor if he is unable to go or is limited in any capacity out there on Saturdays. I don't really know if any team comes out better yet. You just have to kind of wait and see who suits up and actually takes the field on Saturday night. All right, that's going to wrap it up for today. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, all those things. Follow me on social media. It's greatly appreciated. Be here next time for more. We'll give you final thoughts and a preview and prediction of LSU Ole Miss next time on LSU Daily.